one day I was going by the front door and the receptionist said, "Oh, Mother, I got a message here. A lady wants to donate a refrigerator." So I pictured an older person wanting to donate this refrigerator. Sometimes things are in better or worse condition, So I was just trying to think of where we could use this lady's refrigerator. And I asked Tina, our development director, to get in touch with her. Well, the lady's real question was, how much more do you need to finish the refrigerators and the equipment in the kitchen? And Tina said, well, 200,000. And she said, we're going to wire you the money. And we almost fell over.
Welcome to today's podcast episode. We're honored to be joined today by Mother Mary Richard of the Little Sisters of the Poor. As we finish this year and kick off the new year, Mother Mary Richard, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, and I really appreciate the work that you all are doing at the Little Sisters of the Poor. I did, so for our listeners, I did visit a few months back, and Mother Mary Richard provided me with two wonderful books on the foundress Jean Jugan, Saint Jean Jugan, and also Father Ernest Leliev, who we're going to talk about a little bit because the history is so important, not only in terms of the crossover with Saint Vincent de Paul in France, but also back here in Louisville. There's just such a rich connection, and the topic that we're going to be chatting about today is, what should we know? What should the Louisville community know about serving the elderly poor? And I was looking at some information, Mother Mary Richard, on your website and in other places as well. A lot of folks may not know, by 2030, 25%, I mean, it's a big percentage, will be elderly. The ranks of folks getting into that over the age of 65 is growing rapidly, and it's going to continue to grow. And so for those, Mother, who may not be familiar with Little Sisters of the Poor, can you share what you all are doing here in Louisville? I know you've been doing it for 157 years, a long time, but share with our listeners a little bit about Little Sisters of the Poor.
All right. So first of all, thank you for inviting me today. And, just to back up to our foundress, we were founded in 1839 in France by St. John Jugan. She really wasn't intending to found a congregation when she found an elderly lady who was abandoned, paralyzed, blind, and she had been doing good works already, John had, until she was 47 when she did this. She picked up the lady, carried her all the way down the street, up these winding stairs with a rope, and put her in her own bed. So things just snowballed from there. By the time she died 40 years later, there were 2,400 Little Sisters in 10 countries. And right now we're in 31 countries, about 17 homes in the United States. But we consider that our founding gesture was welcoming that woman into her home, and it became, and we know the lady's name, Anne Chauvin, became Anne's home. So that's what we do all over the world, and that's what we do here in Louisville. And so we were one of the first 13 homes founded in the United States with the help of our auxiliary priest at the time, Father Ernest, that I think you want to talk about later. But, it's just amazing how wherever we're implanted, God provides a whole network of helpers. So John couldn't have done it in the beginning without the help of laywomen, and her own roommate was a laywoman who had to agree to have these people coming on in. And so it's just amazing the support that we receive. Our first foundation in 1869 was in South 10th Street, downtown. From the first day that the home was started until it was built and inhabited, it was only 8 months, and it was on in operation. That in itself was kind of a miracle, and the home, continued to welcome the elderly until 1977, when it could no longer be used as a home for the elderly because of life safety codes and its age, and we left Louisville. But then it was the community that really pressed to have us come back, and they formed a group to raise the money, and we opened our existing home now in 91. But it's always that same gesture. So what we do as Little Sisters is that we consider the situation of the elderly person applying. We want to take the poorest, the neediest elderly. We also have to consider if they have family support, because there's a lot of different kinds of poverty, as you know. So now in our home, we're limited. Of course, we don't have a lot of beds. We have 50 nursing home beds. So we can't take everyone that we would love to take. But I think our mission also nowadays more and more is to be a witness, like a little light in the community, of how the vulnerable elderly can be treated and should be treated, and they should continue to be directing their own lives. We're not their bosses. Yeah.
So this is the St. Joseph's home, uh, and it's right there off of is it Poplar Level?
Yeah, we're actually
Yeah.
on Audubon Plaza Drive.
Right, right.
Yeah, off of Poplar Level. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of nestled back in. It's a beautiful property, and
Mhm.
you have those
Yeah,
those.
that was given to the sisters from the Archdiocese. Yeah,
Got it. And you have those 50 beds, and you also have apartment living as well, in addition to the nursing home
we
beds,
do.
right? Yeah. So for
Yeah,
folks that
that's
have
what we
more,
like to do.
go ahead.
Excuse me. Um, we like to welcome elderly people who are still fairly independent if they want to come in. They have to meet the same financial criteria, but that they come in and they're independent, but they're also free to involve themselves in the home as much as possible. And a lot of them come into our main dining room to eat, and some of them, um, the rent is on a sliding scale. Some of them pay very little for their apartment, but they always have their meals. They have all the activities they want to take part in. And then if their health declines, they have first choice to go to our personal care unit and then our nursing unit. Yeah.
You were speaking about the sense of integrity, and the importance of maintaining the sense of integrity, as well as self-esteem. And oftentimes, the elderly, they're treated differently in different cultures around the world. And so what I find just such a blessing, is what you all do to help folks maintain that sense of integrity, and that sense of self-esteem as they kind of progress on their journey, to the end of life. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I will say, and I'll add a little bit of a personal anecdote here. My father passed away about 3 weeks ago, in nursing
Awesome.
care, yeah, in Buffalo, New York, in a facility, Brothers of Mercy. They were brothers that came over from Germany 100 and so many years ago into Buffalo, and created a very similar, community as what you all have, and he was well
Mm.
taken care of, and it was important. And my mom is still alive, and she's in the apartments there. So I really, it's a personal thing for me as well,
Mhm.
in terms of what you all do. But if you can talk a little bit to that, in terms of that importance from, you know, from conception to death, maintaining that sense of integrity and self-esteem, and how that is important to the Little Sisters of the Poor.
Yes. You know, Mother Teresa responded to an inquiry one time by saying, I want to give to the poor for the love of God what the rich can buy for money. And that's the same kind of thought that is ours, you know. Some people have questioned, oh, why do you have private rooms? Well, you could fit two people in the room. And, you know, one of our superiors at a groundbreaking for a new home in the Bronx, she said, you know, these are people who have labored all their life. They've raised families. They deserve to end their life in something more than a curtained cubicle, you know, and that's it, you know. Um, and so we see that our mission is more important than ever now because, you know, assisted suicide, euthanasia, it's more and more spoken about. Some countries where we are, we have to really be very careful because euthanasia is already being practiced. And we have to be careful what hospitals we send them to, what doctors we connect with, and all. But so, you know, we want to promote culture of life in our own little way, you know, that these residents are precious um, and they shouldn't be forgotten, and care for them shouldn't be thought of as a waste of money, you know. Um, and some people say, well, it's better for elderly people to stay at home and not to come into a home like yours. But we find that a lot of, well, I would say most of our residents, they get lonely if they stayed in their own home. And sometimes, as willing as the family is to have them with them, they feel like a burden. And or else they feel like it's just not a peaceful environment that they would want to end their lives in. So when they come to our home, and it's amazing how they blossom and they find friendships with other elderly residents and activities that they enjoy. And you know, we try to bring out their own hidden talents and abilities, and it's a beautiful thing to see, you know. And then we just, it's all about accompaniment. We try to accompany them through all the stages of their end of life so that we try that they would never die alone. There's always a sister at their side and during their dying process. Yeah.
Well, I think, Mother Mary, and I appreciate, the quote from Mother Teresa and what you're saying about, the need for community. It doesn't matter what age you are, you need community. My grandma, she lives in a nursing home in the Crestwood area, and it's like when you just go for a couple of hours at a time and spend it with her, it's incredible just how they brighten up, and that need for just connection, not just with family, but like you said, with the residents that they live with. And I love that you guys, from birth to death, see the value in a culture where I think we, of course, overemphasize and overvalue, those that are young, and we, there's such a beauty when the Bible speaks of that. Gray hair is of a crown of glory is what the Proverbs say. So there's something about when you get old and have that wisdom to offer. I'm curious for you what you've seen in our culture over the last, since 1839, you're talking almost 2 centuries of work that Little Sisters of the Poor has done, across the world. What changes have you seen in how our culture views the elderly poor over that time, and how have you guys had to maybe shift or adapt or evolve, what you guys do from a practical level for the elderly poor to serve them better, here in 2025?
Hmm. You know, for a long time, especially in some cultures, it was just normal for the elderly person to remain with the extended family and be cared for. And then, of course, you see it happening all over the world. That's been the case in a lot of the African countries where we are, and uh, islands in the Pacific and that. But now we see the younger generation kind of moving away to earn money in other countries and leaving these people abandoned, if you will, So we've been making more foundations in these third world countries where perhaps it wasn't so urgent before because of the family involvement. In the U.S., our our homes were very simple. We, for a century almost, that we had the Little Sisters. We had a lot of very able-bodied residents because they didn't have Social Security or whatever, so they came into our homes at 60 years old because they were poor, but they wanted to keep busy. So we had men who wanted to work the garden, they wanted to do some woodworking. We had ladies who wanted to set the tables, they wanted to do some sewing. And so it was a real home that they helped to make work. And they were very happy like that. You know, as time went on, especially in the late 60s and early 70s, when, to keep residents until their dying day meant that we had to be certified as a skilled nursing facility, et cetera. And that brought on a whole nother phase of our work of, being so regulated, and we had to rebuild or combine some homes to bring them up to code, and we had to hire a lot of staff to be in compliance with these regulations. So that was a big change in the 70s, and it was a little bit overwhelming. I sent sisters out to become nursing home administrators and things that we never had to really worry about before. And so that's been a big change of the sisters having to be working with the staff, but trying to impress on them the spirit of Jean Jugan too. And that's a challenge for any mission-driven organization, I think, to have your staff on board. So when sisters were at prayer, whatever, we can be confident that the residents are being taken care of in the same spirit that we would want to. So now again we're in another phase a little bit because we have fewer vocations, and that's kind of a worldwide problem. And so these great big homes that were built for 250 residents, some of them have become just unmanageable, for few sisters. And we want to have a vibrant community in each home that's going to keep the spirit alive. So, we've had many meetings worldwide about this. What we're trending to do now is we've closed some homes and we've merged some homes, and they're doing a lot of experimentation in Indianapolis and Philadelphia. They've replaced the big home with a smaller home that's very homey, manageable. And of course, we can't welcome as many residents, but we're trying to keep that spirit vibrant and alive there. And so that's what we're doing now. And we have the fewer number of employees. It's easier to maintain the spirit in them too. So that's a big change. Another change is that nowadays there is more family involvement with the residents who come in. When I was a young sister, I had a lot of, men who had suffered from alcoholism or lost their family ties, and they had nobody. Nowadays, there is family, which is a good thing. But then when they're in their journey, when they're approaching death and all that, that's another ministry. We have a ministry to the families too, before and after death. So we're glad to have that experience with them. And hopefully it makes it easier for them when they're
When did you start, Mother Mary?
Pardon me?
When did you start with Little Sisters of the Poor?
I made my vows in 76. Yeah. Yeah.
Was that here in Louisville or?
No, we have our novitiate in Queens Village, New York. Yes, that's where we make our first vows.
Are you
Mhm.
from up east or?
Yeah, I'm from New Jersey. Yeah.
Okay. I grew
Mhm.
up in Buffalo, so we're kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
up there.
Yeah,
Same
yeah.
same direction.
Same direction. Yeah.
Same direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Almost 50 years. That's crazy.
it's it.
I
You know
can't
what?
believe it, to tell you the truth. It goes very quickly.
Yeah, you'll be so that no, that's a good point, Tony. I mean, what a milestone that is, Mother. Celebrating 50 years coming up here soon. Do you have plans to have a little celebration? I know you're very humble, you know,
Well, I think
but
those around me have some plans, but my preference would be to keep it very simple.
yeah, I can imagine. I can only, and we talk about this notion of honoring life from conception to death, and I started volunteering with my wife at Little Way Pregnancy Resource Center, and so it's a new thing for me. I'm the receptionist there, but on Tuesdays, and so I call your all's front desk. First thing I do when I get there is I call Little Sisters of the Poor, and just so our listeners know, yes, the St. Joseph's Home is about serving the elderly, but the sisters pray for all of the clients that Little Way Pregnancy Resource Center receives each day. And there's a prayer list on there as well for others, and it's a blessing to know that you all are not only doing what you're doing there at the St. Joseph's Home, but also for the community at large with your prayers as well. These days there's so much talk and negative talk about the power of prayer. Uh, to me, it's essential, and to me, the prayers are heard.
We're very inspired when we get those calls. They'll say 22 clients plus, they'll name some staff members, and we say, it's a very good example for us. We need to also depend on prayer. That's the only way.
What do you see as your biggest needs, challenges coming up here in the next year or so that you're focused on? I mean, you talked about that a bit, with describing some of the different changes over the years, but as you look forward, I know it's hard to see around the corner. It's hard to predict what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is so volatile these days. But what do you see as your biggest? What are the biggest needs that you all have, so that our listeners can kind of wrap their head around what your all's needs are? Certainly, there's financial needs, but I'm sure you've got a campus there. As we know at St. Vincent de Paul, campuses age
Mm-hmm.
and things break down. And
That's right.
I know you've
Yeah,
done some renovations recently. I think the kitchen and some other things.
that's right.
Yeah, but what are some
Yeah.
of the things that our listeners should know where you all have needs?
Um, I have to mention before I even talk about the physical plant, but outreach to young people is something we really need help with, to encourage young people to come into the home as volunteers. And that's the way they kind of can catch the spirit, and maybe it would implant the seed of a vocation, because vocations is absolutely the biggest need. And so we're trying to do that as we can in our different homes, to go out to universities and speak. We always speak in the churches when we do church collections, but to encourage, sometimes young people, they don't feel comfortable going in to see old people. But then when they come in and they meet them, it's a whole different story, and it's very, it's satisfying for them, As you say, also our campus is lovely, but it does require a lot of upkeep. Right now, we're getting ready to do a tree project, which has been thankfully funded by a grant, that we're going to be able to plant 75 new trees on the property. And we have to take some down too, but a lot of them are going to be flowering trees, because we're very green, but we don't have much color. And the residence rooms are all on the first floor. So we're looking forward to having trees that'll turn beautiful colors in the different seasons. That'll be great. Um, we we have 2 boilers that are going to have to be replaced. I would say that would be the biggest expense coming up. Yeah, and we're doing the kitchen. Thank God, um, it's been God's providence has been amazing. I'll tell you one story. We've had this plan in place to replace the freezers and the refrigerators and this equipment in the kitchen, and it's been going on for before I came more than 4 or 5 years, trying to raise money at different fundraisers and everything. And so little by little, we were able to replace one freezer so far. Anyway, one day I was going by the front door and the receptionist said, "Oh, Mother, I got a message here. A lady wants to donate a refrigerator." So I pictured, an older person wanting to donate this refrigerator. Sometimes things are in better or worse condition, So I was just trying to think of where we could use this lady's refrigerator. And I asked Tina, our development director, to get in touch with her. Well, the lady's real question was, how much more do you need to finish the refrigerators and the equipment in the kitchen? And Tina said, well, 200,000. And she said, we're going to wire you the money. And we almost fell over. But, it was amazing, and I can't say who it was or anything, but it was, a gentleman who had died and had said to his wife, I just want you to use our money for the good. So then this woman called back Tina and said, by the way, I want to give you more money to make the residents, to do something to make the residents happy for Christmas. So she said, I'm going to wire you another 100,000. And again, we almost fell over because we don't have a bus that can take the residents in their wheelchairs on an outing or whatever. We have a bigger bus that requires a CDL license. We have nobody in the home that can really get that license. So we've been wanting a smaller, like a 14-passenger bus, so that we can take them to see the Christmas lights and all that. So that's the first thing we thought of, our bus, and so it's just like drops out of heaven when you least expect it, even after waiting 4 or 5 years for it. But God always provides, Yeah.
Well, since 1839, I'm sure the stories that you have across the globe like that. And when I read the books that in my last visit, when you provided me the different books on Father Ernest as well as Saint John Jugon, you hear the stories in there and just the notion of just just laying yourself out and just saying, if it's your will, help us. And I know that you all have had that approach in so many ways to, from a fundraising perspective and all that. And to hear stories like that is a testament to the fact that it is true. I mean, God will provide.
That's right.
It's hard though.
Trust.
It's
Yeah.
really, it's
Yeah.
really, how can our listeners help you? Where can they go to, I know you have a website. What is that website, and where can they go to donate and help out at least financially? And is there a way for, that's one question. The second then, as you mentioned, the younger people, is there some process or something for younger folks to reach out to you all if they want to volunteer or spend time in the home?
Yes. Yeah, they can call us and ask for Maria, and she's our volunteer coordinator. And there's an orientation that she provides for them and try to make match their desires with the needs in the home. And a lot of the needs is to have people to come and talk to our residents, play a game with them. Because, loneliness is a big poverty, and that would be great. Yeah. But we do have our website, Little Sisters of the Poor, Louisville.org. And there's a place on that website where people can donate online if they want to. And I just have to tell you that our residents are on the nursing home are all on Medicaid. Medicaid doesn't cover hardly 51% of our needs. And a lot of that, if you can understand, is payroll employee benefits that we're obliged to provide. So the rest has to be made up with fundraising. People are so good. We have a wish list on our website and at our front door by the statue of St. Joseph, and they drop off things, everyday things, body wash, toothpaste, things like that. Kleenex is very popular, and anything like that is so welcome, And then we do have wonderful benefactors also that provide produce for us, and we make it last. Yeah.
Well, Mother Mary, I'd love to, and again, thank you so much for your time. And I just want to underscore your point about, the generosity of the older age, but also the youthfulness, that you mentioned you guys are wanting more young adults. And I think you need both, right? We see that at St. Vincent de Paul. You need both the young and the old to sustain an organization like Little Sisters of the Poor, like St. Vincent de Paul. And for you
Mhm.
being at Little Sisters of the Poor now for almost 50 years, I'd love to just close with this question of how do you keep the passion going? You mentioned you want a vibrant community. How do you personally, you're talking 5 decades of being in the same place. How do you keep that passion going for yourself and for your residents?
Okay. Well, I would say it's prayer, huh? But just to be clear, I haven't been here for all that time. We get transferred according to the needs. So I've been in different places, and almost 27 years before I came here, I was involved with formation of the young women in our home in Queens who wanted to become Little Sisters. And I think that helped me a lot, to feel young with them and to, discover our vocation through their eyes, something new and exciting way to live the gospel. So that was a blessing for me personally. And now worldwide, the Little Sisters, we've, you know, revamped our constitutions, the guidelines that we live by. And there's study sessions going on in all our homes that we discuss. We pray over it to really try to be who we're supposed to be as daughters of John Chugan. And so it's a real blessing that we don't want to get into a rut. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, this has been a real honor to spend time with you, and blessings to the work that you're doing, and I want to thank you, and well, Tony, this is going to run in
Yep. Kick off the new year, so January.
kick off the new year, and we'll continue to get the word out as well for folks to support the Little Sisters. And I know me personally I have a passion for what you're doing, and will continue to support in any way that I can. But I don't know if you have any last parting words that you'd like to leave for our listeners as we wrap up.
Yeah, I think I want to thank them. We go to many parishes and receive donations, and all the people that send us donations through the mail, the people that drop off the things on our wish list. Sometimes it brings me to tears when I see the exact items that they've chosen, the best to give to our residents. And we're just very, very grateful. And we couldn't remain in Louisville if it wasn't for that. And thank you also for inviting us today.
It was our pleasure. Thank you for your time, Mother Mary.
Okay, God bless.
Okay, Mother, thank you.
Thank you.